Wreck-It Ralph is an original animated film by Walt Disney Animation Studios that takes us where no Disney animated film has gone before, to the arcade. Most Disney animated films are either based on a fairy tale or a novel, or any other form of source material. Even other original animated films, like The Lion King, had some point of reference for how its story is constructed. Wreck-It Ralph, however, was unique in that it didn't have much point of reference. Though the idea of centering characters in the world of video games was already demonstrated in films like Tron, but this one is different in that it's centered on the video game characters themselves. It's set in Litwax Arcade, where arcade games come and go, typical of an ordinary arcade, but once the arcade closes, the sentient game characters can visit each other's games. But there's a couple strict rules in place for their safety. First off, characters can only be revived if they die within their own games.
I'm okay. Fit as a fiddle.
Death outside your game is permanent.
Because if you die outside your own game, you don't regenerate. Ever. Game over.
Second, and more importantly, they gotta make sure they're back in their own game in time for the arcade to open. If they're absent, the player will think the game is broken and it runs the risk of it being put out of order for good. Such are the experiences of Wreck-It Ralph, voiced by John C. Reilly. His role is as the antagonist in the fictional arcade game Fix-It-Felix Jr., which of course takes most of its influence from real-life arcade games in the 80s, most specifically Donkey Kong. After 30 years of playing the villain, Ralph's tired of it all and wants to change.
I don't want to be the bad guy anymore.
One day, he sneaks off to a fictional first-person shooter called Hero's Duty, which is similar to Halo, though the title is a play off of Call of Duty. There, he gets a medal, but some more wacky hijinks cause him to crash land into Sugar Rush, a fictional arcade racing game from the late 90s. It's there he meets a little girl called Vanellope von Schweetz, voiced by Sara Silverman, whose glitchy tendencies strictly prohibit her from getting on the race roster.
You will never be a racer, because you're a glitch, and that's all you'll ever be.
Ralph, having been in a similar position, agrees to help Vanellope become a real racer if it means getting his medal back. But in the meantime, because Ralph left his game, it's about to get unplugged. So Fix-It-Felix, played by Jack McBrayer, sets out to find him, accompanied by Sergeant Calhoun from Hero's Duty, played by Jane Lynch, whose main concern is to eliminate cybugs that may be invading Sugar Rush because of Ralph's recklessness.
Once those cybugs finish off Sugar Rush, they'll invade every other game until this arcade is nothing but a smoking husk of forgotten dreams.
While the film does feature fictional arcade games, it also features real ones like Pac-Man, Street Fighter II, and Root Beer Tapper. Sometimes games are limited to mentions, such as Asteroids and Centipede.
Think about all those guys from Asteroids? Boom, gone. Centipede? Who knows where that guy is, you know?
If you're a big gamer, you'll notice all sorts of cameos, like Dig Dug, the paddle strafe from Pong, the Paperboy, the Coach from Dance Dance Revolution, and Frogger. Oh, and also, Sonic the Hedgehog makes a few appearances every now and then. And yeah, it does make sense for him to be here, since the time-lapse at the beginning of the movie catches a glint of the arcade game Sonic the Fighters. Oh, and then there's Q*bert. In this film, Q*bert and the other characters from his gamesake are portrayed to be homeless after their game had been unplugged. Q*bert actually becomes relevant in telling Felix about where Ralph had gone.
Ralph's gone turbo.
References include the Konami code and some graffiti on the wall saying Shang Long was here in reference to a mistranslated victory taunt in Street Fighter II. Plus, there are some characters that are animated with janky movements that reflect the limited sprite animations of early 80s arcade games. So, the film pays a lot of great tribute to arcade games of the past and the present. But that's not why it's so great. It's so great because it's got a cleverly written story to accompany it. The people who put the film together set pen to paper and wrote a story using the brilliant premise of it being set within the digital code itself. The best one could do with a children's film set in the arcade is an unlikely friendship that leads to the all-important message of self-acceptance. With any movie, no matter what the premise or message is, there is a right way to present it and a wrong way to present it. Oddly enough, the first film managed to present both the right way, and its own sequel would then go on to present its premise and message the wrong way. I'll be talking about that in an upcoming Media Dodger episode. It's not often that modern films like this would stand the test of time, and somehow Wreck-It Ralph managed to do it. Admittedly, the film is much better understood if you are sophisticated in the gaming world. It's set in the arcade, and most of its appeal seem like it would be to gamers, whether retro or modern. But the story it tells proves that it's accessible to anyone, regardless of their gaming status. Because if that little film leaves an impact on gamers and film critics alike, how bad can it be?